Energy Boutique with your energy and ascension forecast for Sunday, September 7th to Saturday, September 13th. So last week, we closed out August with the first quarter moon in Sagittarius. And of course, that was a very pivotal point of change, of action, of eruption, if you will. And it probably highlighted for us a very important choice point where a situation, a circumstance popped off where we realized that something needed to end and die because we can't do this anymore. We have to have the space, we have to have the clean slate to build something new. And of course, that Sag energy illuminated a new truth, a new path, a new quest, a new adventure that we don't really know what the full story is going to be about right now, but it definitely launched us into a new perspective, seeing things very differently. And from that, we are definitely going to be gaining a little bit more insight and clarity, especially as we enter into this eclipse event that is definitely going to stir things up. It's definitely going to create a lot of wild card energies for us to kind of sort through, but we're not in control. The universe is in the driver's seat, and we just have to be a little bit more, I'm going to say, flexible to go along with this ride. We entered into September, of course, wasting no time. We had Saturn retrograde back into the Pisces energy, where he's still sitting at the 29th critical crisis karmic degree. And the very next day, on the 2nd, we had Mr. Mercury leave that Leo energy behind. We've been sitting in that Leo energy for quite some time, as he did go through his retrograde in that heart and soul of the zodiac. But Mercury moved into his placement of power in Virgo energy. And on top of the Virgo season that Mercury is already ruling over, it definitely did a number on our headspace. We've been working very hard to kind of identify the problems in order to fix them, heal them, repair them. We've been doing the dirty work, if you will, getting down in that dirty detail of where it is that our negative ass narrative is kind of keeping us blocked and limited, trapped, if you will, in situations and circumstances that we know we've outgrown, that we know we are growing out of. And as I'm coming to you here Friday evening, Uranus, the Great Awakener, is standing still in preparation of going retrograde. Now, this is happening in the final hours of the 5th, early hours of the 6th, depending on where it is that you're at in the world. But nonetheless, we've already been feeling Uranus's destabilization. There are huge amounts of electricity coming into the cosmos, really affecting not only the collective grids, but of course our own individual grids and fields as well. Uranus is here to destabilize, to illuminate for us where it is that we've been holding on to the old, specifically old ways of thinking, old ways of seeing the world, the people, ourselves as a part of it. Because of course, going retrograde in Gemini energy, we're going to have to be fully illuminated on where it is that we're having a hard time kind of overriding a lot of those old programs. And Uranus is bringing in a lot of energy into the cosmos, creating not only mental plane glitches, but technology glitches as well. Uranus throws wildcard energies at us, and as we're already kind of stepping into this eclipse energy, it's really anybody's game. We're not really going to know who is responsible for some of the unexpected wildcard events that are going to be popping off, but you best believe that it is going to change the game, and it is going to change our minds. Of course, all last week, we've been building towards this full moon total lunar eclipse that will be taking place in Pisces energy. We're popping off at 2:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the 7th. And that is basically going to kick the door wide open for this week's energy. We really don't have a whole lot of major astrology going on other than this eclipse event. And to be quite honest with you, that's enough. We will be building towards the last quarter moon in Gemini, which will be taking place on the 14th. And that's when we're going to be presented with the choice point on the inner dialogue, the narrative, the perspective, the thoughts, ideas, and opinions that we're currently divided on. That's when we get to choose the old operating system or the new operating system that is currently still being installed. Now, there is a special mention here. On the 13th, we do have the Sun and Mercury coming together for their superior conjunction, which is called a Cazimi or a Kazmi, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And basically, the Sun and Mercury blend their energies together, and that is going to bring in a whole boatload of insight. And it's probably going to fry our brains. And it's probably going to create more confusion than it is clarity, initially speaking, but we are going to be unpacking some of the downloads, some of the details that we will be receiving in the weeks and months to come. So we have a lot to kind of talk about, a lot to discuss, but I will kind of give you a cautionary note here. There's going to be a lot that we talked about in last week's Ascension forecast carried over into this week's Ascension forecast. And the reason being is because, well, we're in eclipse season. So it's anybody's guess, it's anybody's game. We also are all on different points in our healing path, in our healing journey. We all have individualized birth charts that are being aspected in very different ways. And so although these forecasts are kind of, a collective summary on what we can expect, of course, all of those ascension symptoms are going to vary. And so, the September horoscope or forecast specifically for your rising sign, if you haven't downloaded that yet or accessed that as of yet, I would really recommend you do that. You can jump over to my Patreon, get that information for yourself. It's literally like a guide to navigate the month ahead and where all of these energies and aspects are popping off in certain areas of your life so that you're not surprised, so that you can stay ahead of the game. I really don't feel like enough people take advantage of those particular forecasts. There should be no confusion. Even in confusing parts, there should be no confusion of why it is that you're experiencing that level of confusion, because I've mapped it all out for you. And there is that September energy guide that you could be following along with as well, event by event, with all the highs, the lows, everything in between, the light, the shadow work, the manifesting guide, where it's taking place in your life. All of that is accessible on Patreon as well. And because we are talking about a very important moon event, the moon guide is also available to you. Again, we are reaching the halfway climactic point of the Virgo lunar cycle that we began back on August 23rd at a 0 degree. We're reaching the halfway point at this 15 degree. And of course, we will be closing this particular cycle out with that last quarter moon that we will be experiencing in Gemini energy before resetting and entering into the second Virgo lunar cycle, which will be popping off with that 29th critical crisis karmic degree under the solar eclipse energy of that new moon in Virgo. So there's a lot going on. All of those resources are available to you, whether you want to become a Patreon member or you just want to pay per view. That's totally up to you. Or if you're just interested in staying up with the astrology forecast that I put out, I would definitely recommend that you subscribe to the full forecast channel here on YouTube. And that way, at least you're getting the information, and what you choose to do with that information is up to you from there. There's definitely a lot of resources that I think that people aren't really using to their advantage. And again, you're only sleeping on yourself. If you find yourself in a state of chaos and craziness and you're wondering what the F is actually going on, again, there should be no confusion. There should be no questioning. It's all mapped out for you. And I really recommend that you lean in and you do the work. So the ascension symptoms are going to be a little bit all over the place because, again, eclipse energy is all over the place. Again, there is going to be a lot of information carried into this particular forecast and into this next week based off of what we talked about last week in the Ascension forecast. That's when essentially the eclipse energies, the destabilization, the timeline bleed began. And depending on how this last week went for you, that's probably going to be a major indication on how this week is going to go for you. So, for example, if last week, you reached a climactic point where, situations, circumstances popped off, maybe you had an emotional shit show pop off, crisis point of some sort, well, then, your storyline kind of already hit a peak. That doesn't mean that situations and circumstances aren't going to continue to build on that particular storyline in this next upcoming week, but the bulk of the drama has already kind of hit the fan, so to speak, and now you're just kind of wading through the aftermath. But if last week was kind of calm for you, then you might want to kind of gear up in anticipation for this week to be a little bit more crazy, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more dramatic of sorts. Because of course, if the shit didn't hit the fan for you last week, it probably will this week. Eclipse energies, I don't know anybody that goes through these eclipse seasons unscathed. Even the people that don't know about astrology, that don't even know that it's eclipse season, if you listen to them talk about the events popping off in their lives, it is very clear that there is, some sort of karmic chapter ending and closing for them, where emotions and the mental plane are overstimulated, where they feel like they're going cray-cray. There's a high level of confusion. So, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter whether you are believing in astrology or not, whether you are under the understanding of what, this ascension process is or not. You could be totally numb to all of this information and you're still going through it. It is collective. It's not just something that happens to those that know that it's happening. It is something that is happening to us collectively speaking, because this is how humanity evolves. And so it's a very interesting dynamic to kind of observe where everybody is at and just kind of, again, listen, picking up on the hints and clues of how other people are going through, highs, lows, and everything in between. Because again, collectively speaking, you need to let go of the old. You need to break down those systems, those structures, that foundation in order to release the energy of the collective to actually move into new timelines. So everybody that's kind of going through a shit show right now where endings and closures are happening, even if it's not immediate, you see that eventually, there is going to be a final completion point to this particular story take place. It's all happening because that version of self in that collective system and structure, those timelines are collapsing. We can't go back to that. And everyone is experiencing some sort of ending, some sort of closure in order to release that energy and to basically free themselves up, liberate themselves to move on and move forward with the collective's energy and with their own karmic energy as well. So, that being said, if you are looking for extra support through this craziness, definitely consider jumping over to my Patreon community or downloading my book, purchasing it on Amazon. There, again, is a multitude of resources to help you with these ascension symptoms, to help you understand what's going on, karmically speaking. You definitely should not just be raw dog in life right now. There is support, there is community, there is tons of information and resources. And again, it's all helping you to empower yourself to, again, roll instead of be dragged. This week, we are going to be absolutely exhausted in a way that none of us are going to be able to articulate in a way that actually makes sense and actually conveys the level of exhaustion that we're feeling. Now, it's going to be absolute exhaustion on every level, considering the fact that we are in a washer machine of karma right now, of emotion, of overwhelming mental reprogramming. Every level is being affected. There is a void in our soul space as we are kind of essentially unpacking the spiritual, soulful baggage that we've been carrying from one incarnation into the next, from one karmic chapter into the next. Mentally speaking, we're in Virgo season. We have all of these activations helping us to reprogram, rewire our neural pathways in real time. That's exhausting. Emotionally speaking, Pisces energy is no joke. There is this emotional release and purge that takes place under a lunar eclipse because things are being removed out of our lives that are blocking the path from us moving on and moving forward. And physically speaking, you have to slow the body down into a state of rest to truly be able to receive the codes, the downloads, the insight, the clarity, the revelations in the way that we need to. And so it does kind of feel like we are just running on empty on all fronts, on all levels, because essentially we're being rewired. And that is a very tiring process. It's not fun. It's not easy. We are closing karmic chapters. We are closing particular parts of ourselves, of our lives. We are wrapping up some spiritual residue that the common thread has spread over multitude of incarnations This is no joke. And because it's no joke, we are feeling this level of exhaustion on every level and in ways that we can't even put into words because there literally is no words for it. Our central nervous system is going through a major renovation, a major recalibration. You know, when we're talking about reprogramming and recoding and rewiring our mental planes, we're talking about neural pathways. We're talking about recalibrating the synapses, the electrical charges in our brains. We're talking about basically collapsing old unconscious narratives and dialogues and perspectives and lenses in our brains while essentially establishing new ones. And whether you realize that this is going on or not, it's having a major effect on your central nervous system. Now, you could have a central nervous system flare up. If you have autoimmune disease or anything of the sort, you're well versed in the fact that you could wake up one day and you can feel the electricity running through your body. There are certain nerve spasms, tremors that pop off. And, you know, if you have sciatica, if you have, you know, sensitivities when it comes to your sensory system, all of this is going to be jacked up here this week. And not only is it jacked up, overstimulated because of this rewiring, but it's overwhelmed to the point where it's going to feel like our brains are fried. Our central nervous system is fried. And that's because we're receiving more energy now in our physical body through our vessel than we ever have before. Sometimes you need to burn the whole electrical structure down and out if it was built with conductors that are no longer in modern day use in order to actually install the new wiring system that is up to code. And a lot of us are feeling this nervous system overwhelming state of zaps and glitches due to our meridian channels now not only illuminating for us where it is that there's energy blockages in our physical body due to emotional, mental pain and trauma residue stuck in our cellular memory, but it's also kind of harnessing and housing more electricity in our meridian channels than ever before. And, you know, if you want to take it a couple of months back, we were doing the work on expanding our soul self, and then we shoved it back into the physical vessel. We had a couple of weeks there where our physical bodies were just in a major state of aches and pains because we were adjusting to this new level of electricity. And now that the soul self and the physical body have been amalgamated back into a state of wholeness, now we're taking a look at this, you know, operating system because something isn't right. We're not functioning as optimally as we thought we would with this new soul system upgrade and this new physical upgrade. Now we're running the system and we're realizing, oh, there's a glitch there. Oh, there's a miscommunication there. And this is why we're going through this rewiring, this recoding, this reprogramming of thyself in order to make this system as efficient as possible. But with that comes a lot of shocks. You know, I just want you to think about being an electrician, and I want you to think about, you know, going into an old house that has this old electrical system in it, you know, these fuse boxes and these old conduits that are very dangerous. They're not up to code. When you try to either repair an old electrical system or rework it in a way that allows the old electrical system to still be intact and standing, many times you're going to get zapped. You're going to essentially get electrocuted. And the, let's call it problem solving feature of this is to say, okay, well, let's rip out all of the electrical that is not up to code. It is not functioning well, which means that you're in for a major overhaul where your electrical system is concerned. And that is no easy job. It is no feat, and it's very expensive. And we're watching the cost of that play out in real time because we're absolutely exhausted. So we're going through all of these electrical system upgrades. And of course, the major, let's call it pain in the ass that we're experiencing right now is this mental tension, the head pressure, the buzz, the confusion, the disorientation. All of this is because we are getting hardwired in a brand new way in real time. And now that we're in Virgo energy, may I just remind you that up until we hit that 15th degree, and I'm talking specifically about Mercury in Virgo at this time because the sun is a little bit ahead of the game in this Virgo season, we will be hitting that 15th degree with the full moon, total lunar eclipse in Pisces. We're going to be at the halfway point of this Virgo season. And so typically speaking, the first 15 degrees of Virgo highlights the problems in order to fix them, heal them, repair them. The 15th degree is where we kind of anchor into the present moment, realizing what isn't working and now coming up with solutions on what we could do to improve the system. And we spend the 15th to the 29th degree kind of, implementing those changes. So the sun is going to get there, which means that our identity, this new version of self, is going to become a little bit more grounded and anchored in, but the neural pathways are still being rewritten. And Mercury in Virgo energy is dissecting with surgical precision all of the looping patterns and behaviors and conversations and thoughts, patterns and ideas, all of the things that have us stuck in worry and anxiety, stuck in the old, fixating on situations and circumstances that we actually don't have the power to improve. And we're getting stuck in some hard-ass narratives. Now, that head pressure is no joke. And because Uranus is retrograding, because we just had the moon in Aquarius, which, in case you didn't feel it, was actually bringing the new operating system online. We just haven't actually downloaded it as of yet. I believe, and again, this is only my personal belief from observation and just seeing the astrology coming at us throughout the course of this next week. I believe that on the 13th, when the sun and Mercury come together for their cazimi, that is when the operating program that is currently being downloaded in us is going to be fully downloaded. So right now we're just watching that download bar reach, like, let's say 89%. And by the time we hit the 13th, we're going to be at 100%, and we're going to be able to actually go into that operating system file and operate that application for the first time. And again, just like in computers, when you install a new operating system and you actually get to, reboot your computer, restart your computer, and launch it for the first time, it takes some time to get up to speed. It takes some time to illuminate what existing programs can no longer function under this new operating software. And that's where the glitching comes in, because I think that this week, not only is it like mental and emotional glitching, we're going to feel the central nervous system highlight in our physical body where the emotions, where that mental residue is stuck in the physical body. That's where the body's going to be glitching out. But I feel like, the old programs that we've been running, the old ways of thinking, the old ways of feeling, the old ways of acting, the old ways of doing, we are going to feel very foreign in our bodies. And it's going to be because we're running this new operating system, and the old apps on our computer, some of them are going to work flawlessly. Some of them are going to adapt. Some of them are not going to be problematic at all. But there are going to be some apps that you can't kind of go in and refresh, that you can't just upgrade. Some apps are going to have to be deleted and removed. And that's going to kind of follow, I would say, into the following week. I don't think it's going to come at us this week. Again, I'm really fixated on that 13th, having the sun and Mercury kind of hardwire the new programming, the new operating system into the physical body. It is Virgo energy. Virgo energy is mind and matter. And so whatever it is that we're receiving, whatever it is that we're kind of building towards in our headspace will be fully operational through the physical form once the sun and Mercury kind of, do their thing, blend their energies together and reset this system. So there's a lot of head pressure that comes with that. Last week we talked about like this pulsing sensation in the head space. And again, this is just the higher realms of our intellect being ruled over by Uranus and by that Aquarius moon that we just had. And the lower level intellect is ruled over by Mercury, Virgo, and Gemini. Technically, Mercury and Gemini, that is their domain because the Virgo energy roots it into the physical form. But again, they're all still very similar. We're still talking about rulerships here. But this pulsating sensation is crown activations. It is the neural pathways being rewritten. It is us challenging our old belief system, our old perspectives. It's us opening up our mind space in ways that we're not even consciously aware of as of yet. And again, with that head pressure comes dizziness and disorientation, comes a certain level of confusion. And because this is a Pisces full moon eclipse, delusion. And I think that it's going to be more intense than we are typically used to. Again, eclipse energies always are. So these are like ascension symptoms on steroids, essentially. And they're going to pack a very powerful punch because, again, this is make or break it season. And what we're making is an attempt to override the system and therefore anchor in the higher self and therefore start activating our creator abilities to therefore start building and creating a realm and reality, more of resonance, more of a match to our vibration and frequency that we're trying to bring online right now. And what we're breaking is the holding pattern that our ego programming has us stuck in. And if you allow fears, doubts, and insecurities to get the better of you through this eclipse season, then you will not see the change. You will not see the upgrade. You will feel the challenge of the operating system trying to come online, but you, whether you're aware of it or not, are kind of entering code to prevent that operating system from actually taking over and taking control. It's like wanting to go back to Windows XP. You know what I mean? We all want it because it was an easier time. We knew what to expect. It flowed a lot better. But we can't go back to XP, as disappointing as that is. And so, we're going to be definitely struggling with what needs to stay and what needs to go. And bringing into our awareness, bringing into our consciousness, all of these programs that have been running in the background without our awareness. That's the ego programming. So a lot of this is going to be in the head space because I think that that's where the bulk of the energy is taking place. The electricity is palpable in the air though. So there's going to be a lot of static electricity in the air, which means that you're probably going to be getting zapped by, appliances or touching certain things, maybe static in your hair. Again, a lot of head energy where the crown is buzzing, this pulsating type of energy. I feel like there is, I want to call it an imaginary vice grip on our headspace. Like it feels like there is an applied pressure from the outside world squeezing our head. And there's this rapid manic type of buzz going on inside of our head. And there are these flashes of insight and vision and memories that may be anchored into this incarnation or could be coming from other ones. Because again, as I explained in last week's Ascension forecast, this is the time where all of the individual selves that are operating in different timelines and different dimensions are kind of being smushed back together in order for us to defrag the energy, the emotions, the mentality, the memories that belong to the timeline that the collective is currently collapsing. And so there is like this assimilation that needs to happen, and then this individualized divide that needs to happen again. And it's almost like if you were to think of an accordion, like we're compressing the self back into one version of self to see how that operating system is going to function. And then we expand that accordion out into all the individualized dimensional selves that we got going on and see how they're operating individually speaking under the operating program of the oversoul. And then again, we squeeze that accordion back in and bring all of those holographic dimensional versions of self back into one version of self to see how all the common threads and timelines are going to impact the individual selves when they separate once again. And so because of that, everything is in flux. Everything feels off. Everything feels weird. Gravity is going to feel off. Your space-time continuum is going to feel off. Your brain is going to feel off. There's a lot of brain farts and verbal vomit going on. It feels like we aren't fully functioning in our headspace. And it's hard to kind of put the right words with the right thought, with the right emotion that we're trying to articulate, communicate, and convey. And because, we have to talk about Mr. Mercury, he is in his rulership over Virgo season. He is in his rulership in Virgo energy. He is in his rulership over these eclipse events in combination with specifically this full moon Pisces event with Jupiter and Neptune. That is a whole recipe a whole recipe for delusion and confusion. Jupiter is expanding and magnifying the growth spurt that we're going through. Neptune, of course, is all about our intuition and our imagination and kind of, I'm going to say, detaching from reality to live in la la land. That's where we create a lot of the delusion, confusion, and psychosis that many of us are dipping our toes in. And then we have Mercury in this Virgo energy that is so down to earth, so connected to reality that it's a hard process to even fathom how we're supposed to rewire this coding, this programming, this brain function when we are just holding on for dear life, holding on to the remnants of what is tried, tested, true, and familiar. And so I just feel like, the headspace, the throat chakra activations, let's talk about the throat for a second. Again, Mercury rules over communication, so we have to talk about our throat space. You could have an itchy throat. You could have a sore throat. You could have constant clearing or coughing in order to clear that junk and gunk out of your throat. It could feel like your airways are kind of closing in, like you're trying to breathe through a straw, like it's not as easy to breathe as it used to be. There could be a strain. I myself, I know if you've been with me for any amount of time, you would know that I struggle with my voice. That is due to the damage to my vocal cords that I sustained in my near-death experience. But anywho, I digress. You can hear in my voice when my voice is tired. It's almost like, how you feel when you're in a night out and there's loud music and you're screaming all night just to be, talking to your friends or whatever. And then the next day you're like hoarse. Like it hurts to talk and there's like a strain there. There's like a wind there that just doesn't feel normal. These are all the different activations that could take place in that throat chakra activation that we're all going to be experiencing. Again, it really comes down to your own individualized chart and where it is that you're at in your own healing journey on how some of these ascension symptoms are actually going to manifest for you. So we have, major digestive issues on flux as well. A lot of that is because Virgo energy majorly impacts the digestive system and the gut. We carry anxiety, nervousness, worry, all of the fears, doubts, and insecurities. We carry that in our gut space. And that's why when you're stressed out and your mental plane and your mental health isn't as great or as strong as it needs to be, there's a knot in your stomach. You can literally feel your digestive system being upset. You're either in a pukey state of nausea or it's coming out the other end. And the bubble guts just is not a fun state for any of us to be in. But this time around, I just kind of want to say, yes, it could go from starving to death to not being able to feel fulfilled with what it is that you're eating. Maybe you're having some very strong cravings that even when you eat whatever it is that you're craving, it's not hitting the spot like you need it to. I do feel like there's going to be a lot of emotional eating. And the reason for that is because Pisces energy is the escape artist of the zodiac. We like to numb. We like to disassociate. And so you could turn to food as an escape. But what I would also want to bring to your attention is I need you to be very careful with your drug and alcohol consumption. If that's still a part of your life, which again, my feelings as far as alcohol goes, anybody that is on the spiritual path that is still putting alcohol in their body, like I will never understand that. I do not get that. You're opening yourself up to other entities to take over. That's why people drink, is to lower their inhibitions. But when you lower your inhibitions, you lower the strength of your field. And when you lower the strength of your field, you're inviting parasitic spirits in to tap into that particular energy and to take over and to take control. And that's why you have people that get blackout drunk and basically become someone that they don't even recognize themselves because they open themselves up to other entities. And so if you're consuming alcohol these days, first of all, I have no clue how you do it. Second of all, I would really recommend that you try to cut that out as much as possible. But what I would also want to say is that we have to be careful anytime that we're having a Piscean event, specifically with this eclipse energy, kind of adding an extra layer of intensity on things, because the smallest amount of alcohol, the smallest amount of drugs, and when I am talking about drugs, I'm talking about actually prescribed drugs as well. You could have been taking this particular drug your whole life. It's going to have more of an impact under this eclipse energy, specifically with this full moon in Pisces event. And a lot of the reason of that is because we're hypersensitive. Everything in our operating system is going full tilt. Like we are overwhelmed and overstimulated on all fronts, on all aspects. And the escapism that comes with the Piscean influence, where we literally want to numb and disassociate from life, anything that you turn to numb yourself, to numb emotions. Yeah, I'm talking about drugs and alcohol having more of an impact, more of an influence. But you could turn to food, you could turn to work, you could turn to online. Online is the biggest addiction that we're currently facing as a collective. And I know it's an oxymoronic thing because, you know, we're all on our devices right now, taking part in this little community sesh that we got going on. But realistically speaking, I am of the very, very strong mind that we need to get rid of our phones specifically. I have less of a problem with like hardwired desktops or laptops. But our phones are literally going to be the death of us. And the technology streaming through our phones and having that non-visual red light beeping all the time to disturb your neural pathways, like the phone and technology is going to be the death of us. And I don't say that from a fear-mongering state. I say it from a scientific and psychological state. If you knew what these phones were doing to your brains, I don't know why any of us would continue to use them. But anywho, I digress. My point is, digestion is going to be effed up, and your ability to stay in control under the influence of drugs and alcohol is going to be very limited. And if you are somebody that just likes to have one glass of wine, that one glass of wine is going to hit you like you just drank a bottle. And again, the normal medications that you take are going to have more of an impact, more of an influence now than they ever do. And it's because of the hypersensitivity, and it's because of the escapism energies that are getting kind of triggered and activated. This is unconscious energy in Pisces, you know? The Aquarius energy is where we bring the unconscious into the conscious. But this is a Pisces event. So we are all up in the unconscious part of ourselves. And so we have to kind of limit the, let's call it, extracurricular additives that we use to escape reality, because they are extra detrimental at this particular point in the calendar. So I already talked about the absolute exhaustion that we're going to feel on all different levels, but may I also just kind of plug in here in case I didn't emphasize it enough? It's due to the processing of energies that is going on at a rate that you're even unaware of. We're processing years, we're processing lifetimes, we're processing dimensions, we're processing multitude of timelines, storylines, versions of self. We are basically being put through this time accelerator at this particular point in time. We're being condensed, like I previously mentioned, like taking all versions of self, condensing them into one, expanding them out again. What is that called? You know, the arts and crafts thing where you fold the paper, you cut the little person out one time, but then you unfold it, and there's like a multitude of these little paper people holding hands. Again, brain farts. I have not been having very good luck with my brain here as of late. And I think that that's a true indicator that we're about to basically dive off the deep end of not being able to put simplistic words to concepts. And I know I'm having brain farts already. But anyways, that's the visual that I was just given, was when you fold your paper in the way that I just described. And then you only have one little paper man, but then you unfold them and you have a multitude of paper men, and then you can squish them back into one again. And that's exactly what we're going through in order to, again, kind of defrag the useless information, the useless memories, the useless emotions, to collapse that particular timeline and give us a little bit more memory space, if you will, in order to have this new operating system actually be downloaded within us. Again, when you take a look at your computer and you want to upgrade your system, you need a certain amount of memory in order to do that. And right now, we're kind of removing the data files in the memory stick, if you will, to create enough space for this new operating system to have the space to actually be downloaded in. So that's very tiring. There's a lot going on that we're not even aware of. I want to talk about the elevator flutters. Now, I talked about them before, and again, I'll just I'll set the scene for you. When you're in this elevator and the elevator is going up and it's going down or whatever, and it actually stops at the level and it opens the doors, you get off that elevator, but there's your astral body, if you will, your energetic field needs a little bit of time to kind of catch up and align again with the physical body. And so when you get off the elevator, it feels like you're still moving and you feel the flutter, you feel your stomach drop. And I feel like this elevator flutter that we feel basically in our gut, in our solar plexus, if you will, we're going to be having a lot of moments where we're going to be feeling that elevator drop in our stomach. And I feel like those are going to be the indicators that we are condensing, again, our individual selves back into the quote unquote one self oversoul in order to, again, kind of unfold the paper men and see where it is that each individualized paper man is standing when we remove certain data packets out of that memory stick in order for us to have the space to free up for this new operating system to be kind of downloaded and activated. And so the flutters, although they are very disorienting and uncomfortable and they come at the most wackadoodle times, I want you to really pay attention to what you're thinking about, what you're speaking about, what you're feeling at the time, what you're experiencing at the time. Because again, when they're giving us this, metaphysical hint and clue that we just eliminated something and we just condensed ourselves back into one in order to see how that version of self is going to function, I think that should be like a green flag, if you will, that we're on the right path. Things are happening. Things are kind of happening according to plan, so to speak. And that should be semi-reassuring that all is well, even if it doesn't feel well. With those flutters and with this extra sensory experience that I think that we're going to be having this week, it does kind of feel like our temperature is going to be all over the place. You could go from hot to cold and then back to hot again in less than 60 seconds, or maybe you're just erring on the side of cold, or maybe you're just burning up. Now, again, this is an individualized ascension symptom that is going to differ for all of us. Typically speaking, I kind of look at it like when you're running hot, that is new energy coming in, illuminating where there's blockages, having a hard time moving through the meridian channels as easily as it would like because of these blockages. Whereas the cold sensation is bringing new energy in and it's flowing through the system. We just haven't adapted to it yet. It doesn't feel comfortable yet. And so we could, again, it doesn't mean that you have to stick to one temperature over the other. I think we're going to experience a multitude of this, but just understand that if you're erring on the side of being cold and then all of a sudden a wave of hotness comes over you, it's because there's a new, let's call it data packet in this program that we're trying to download as far as the operating system goes. That data packet is having a hard time being installed because there's another application, another program still existing on your computer at this particular point in time that is in a direct conflict with allowing this new data packet to be installed with the coding that it needs in order to run this new program. So when we run hot, that is kind of the energy trying to break through these code blocks, if you will, that are preventing the new programming from coming in cold. And again, that cold sensation is going to be something that you're not going to be able to correct with an extra layer of clothes or, putting yourself in a hot bath or whatever. Like, this is energetic. It does feel physical because, of course, the physical body is the messenger to the energetics that are popping off. But we're not going to be able to kind of just flip a switch and reverse whatever temperature state we're in. We're going to have to allow the energies to do their thing. We are going to have to pay attention, hot, cold, and in between, to kind of get a better understanding, if you will, on where it is that there's certain energy blockages in our physical body that need our attention, need our help, if you will, to break them down so that the cold energy can take over. And that's going to be an indicator that the new program is installed and starting to kind of do a trial run and flowing very easily through your system. The pressure to figure it all out. Now, we are in Virgo season, and Virgo season and Virgo energy wants to have everything mapped out, wants to understand everything, wants to have control over everything, wants to make sense of everything, logically and practically speaking. And of course, there is that added pressure there. I'm not saying that there isn't pressure to want to figure it out, to want to have all the answers, to want to know where we're going to end up, to want to know how we're going to end up there. Okay. I'm not saying that that is like, a horrible thing. That is part of the ego programming, part of the physical body programming. What we're supposed to be doing is leaning into the Piscean energy, which requires us to be okay with not knowing, which requires us to trust the process, which requires us to surrender to the universe, showing us, guiding us the way to our desired outcome. And so the pressure to have it all figured out is going to be there. But again, if you're feeling that, you have to pause and you have to say, okay, why am I allowing my ego programming to have more power over this situation than I know it should have, right? So the more time you spend in the logical, practical mind space is the more energy that you're voting that you want the ego programming to have control. Because the soul and the spirit doesn't think, it feels. And when you're feeling your way through, instead of thinking your way through, you're giving more, let's call it votes for your soul self, your higher self, to be the operating system that is going to take us into this next chapter. So although the pressure is there to figure it all out, to think through it, to make sense of everything, I would definitely recommend that you resist doing that. And the minute that you catch yourself in that think tank is the minute that you consciously say, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and wreck my brain over it because I don't want my ego programming to have control over this next chapter of my life. I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to focus on the, details of the outcome that I would love to see. And I'm going to trust that the universe is going to guide me there. Okay. This is where faith comes in. And many of us have a real tough love life lesson in the lesson of building up our faith. And in order for the soul self to take full operational control and move us into the next chapter, you have to have trust, you have to surrender, you have to have faith. And that is the last thing that our mental plane or intellect wants us to do. We have been trained to base everything on logical, practical, common sense, proof, data, statistics, information. And of course, the more you think, the more you anchor in that ego programming that we're trying to deconstruct. So we really have to be more intentional, if you will, with what it is that we give our time, energy, and attention to. I think that regardless of the temperature that we may be experiencing, we're going to be on the dry side of life. Now, it would seem a little bit oxymoronic to think that we're going to be dry because this is technically a water event. But I think that we are essentially drying up, if you will, the old neural pathways, the old emotions, the old memories, the old thoughts, the old ways of being. I feel like that is drying up in order to essentially decompose, which is the essential death that we need in order to provide endings and closures, in order to provide us with a clean space, a clean slate to start something new. This is the regenerative process. Nothing just dies and stays dead. It regenerates. A new beginning can only happen out of the death of something. And so this is dry skin. This is dry eyes. This is dry mouth. This is just dry sense of humor. We're in Virgo season, so a dry sense of humor would make sense. But everything is just dry. And I think that when you take a good look around, I don't know where you're at in the world, but we're in a drought here in Eastern Canada. We are doing the rain dance every day, so far very unsuccessfully. There's no grass left. Plants are dying left, right, and center. Poor animals are struggling to stay hydrated. We're struggling to stay hydrated. Everything is just dying. But we also know that this isn't going to be the end. The grass does grow back. The animals will find a water source. The plants will come back in a different season. It will rain eventually. But I just think that when you take a good look around at your environment, it is very indicative of mirroring back to you how it is that your physical body is feeling as well. And I know we're all in different places in the world, and I know that that's not going to be cohesive for everyone. But I'm just taking a good look out my window right now, and it is an absolute dry ass mess out there. And I am feeling the dryness already start to creep in my skin, in my lips, in my throat, all of these things. And I think that that is highly indicative of the electricity that is coming into the earth plane right now with Uranus's stationing. And of course, that Aquarian moon that we just had. And, you know, when you think of this water event, it should be giving us moisture, but I don't think it is. I think we're thirsty for information. We're thirsty for wisdom and knowledge. We're thirsty for endings and closures. We're thirsty for this new adventure to actually begin. And I think that even though it is a water event, it is going to be highly emotional and highly intuitive. But I don't think it's giving us the actual moisture content that we very much need, both for our, you know, physical environments out in our landscapes and for our biological environments as well. So depending on where that dryness is kind of popping up for you, pay attention to that. You may actually have, you know, patches of dry skin. I want you to pay attention to any type of skin eruption that you may be having, because of course our skin is the largest organ that we have. And typically speaking, by the time there is some sort of skin eruption, it's kind of too late to nip whatever it is in our internal organs and systems in the bud. There's a reaction of something going on internally speaking that is now bringing our attention to that particular area of our body through skin, rashes, explosions, eruptions, whatever the case may be. I feel like itchiness is definitely going to be something that many of us are going to just be absolutely annoyed AF about. Although itchiness is a sign of healing, it is absolutely annoying and irritating. And I think the itchiness is going to be in places that we can't essentially scratch. So maybe you're having an itch in your inner ear. And as you know, it is not advisable to take knitting needles or pens or anything of the sort and stick it in your ear to try and itch it. But that is the sensation. That is the type of itch that we're trying to scratch here. And again, our mental plane is healing. The new programming is healing. The new ways of thinking and speaking to ourselves and communicating ourselves outwardly is healing. So it would make sense if we had an itch in our inner ear, which essentially is in the middle of our brains. That's what it feels like anyways. You can have itchy eyes. We're not seeing clearly. This is an eclipse. We're being eclipsed from the details that we want, being eclipsed from the truth, being eclipsed from the bigger, greater, grander picture here. And although our eyes may be itchy itchy and we're rubbing them, it almost feels like there's something in them kind of blurring up our state of vision, if you will, because we're absolutely in a whirlpool of emotion and of karma. We are not seeing things in the way that they actually appear. Again, eclipse season is all about us. We think, because we're, ego led here, we think we know what's going on. We think we have all the information and details. We think we can make a decision in an informed, perspective or opinion on something. If you decide to allow your ego programming to convince you of that, and you do make decisions, which you shouldn't be making in eclipse season, and you make commitments, which again, you shouldn't be doing, and you actually believe that you're being fully informed by situations and circumstances, you're going to be horribly, horribly disappointed in the weeks to come. We are not well informed. We are not seeing things clearly. We are not even close to seeing the big picture in the way that it's actually going to present itself. And so this is why it's highly advisable to just act as the observer. Just because you have new information coming in doesn't mean that that's the only information that is to come in. Just because you're observing a situation that you think has fully run its course doesn't mean it's actually done its full course. And we have to expect the unexpected. We have to be open to wild card events. Just when you think that things couldn't get any more climactic or interesting or intense, you will be surprised. So we just want to make sure that the itchiness that we're kind of observing in our bodies, that we want to map that back to, what it is that we're thinking, what it is that we're feeling, the state of being that we're in. Yes, it's a great sign, but it is annoying AF. And again, where it appears in your physical body carries hints and clues and messages on where it is that you're currently at in your own healing journey. I will say that there is going to be tremors, shaking, visible, actual shaking in our physical bodies, vibrating, if you will. I know I kind of touched on that with the glitching and with the central nervous system flares and all of those things, but you could feel like you're vibrating from the inside out. You could feel when you're sitting in a comfy position, maybe curled up watching a show or whatever you're doing, you could feel like there's like an internalized organ that's just vibrating, and you try to poke on your belly to see if it moves. And there is an actual vibration going on in your body. Maybe it's that you're standing and you don't feel very safe or secure or stable on your feet, and your legs are literally shaking and vibrating. Maybe it's the tremors in your hands. Either way, there is a whole hell of a lot amount of energy and pressure coursing through your physical body. And because it's applying pressure to the nervous system, because we're going through a detox, so the detox system is also being triggered and activated. Pay attention if you have swollen lymph nodes. Pay attention to what it is that you're actually putting in your body as far as food goes, because we want to cleanse the system, not junk it up with a bunch of processed foods and ingredients and chemicals that are going to slow this system down. There's just a lot of instability in the physical form here this week. And because of that, now I typically, we talk about heart activations. We have to talk about heart activations every week because the heart chakra is the one and only chakra that acts as a bridge, if you will, from the lower chakra system that connects us to our physical bodies in this earth plane to the higher chakra system that essentially connects us to our soul self and to the higher realms of intelligence. That heart chakra makes or breaks everything. And so there's always heart activations. But this week, there's going to be a lot of narratives pop up, a lot of shadow work pop off that surrounds itself around self-worthiness and self-deservingness. Now, here's the thing. We're collapsing old versions of self. We're collapsing old timelines. We are collapsing old soul contracts with old romantic partners, friendships, family members. Doesn't really matter. Old people. We are essentially on the bridge between the old world and the new world, and we don't know if we feel deserving enough for the new world that awaits us. Now, again, this comes down to the shadow work, comes down to the healing journey. Sometimes getting what it is that you prayed for is the scariest ass thing that you could absolutely be faced with in your life. And you may be sitting there and going, I don't know if I'd be afraid of accepting $1 million. But trust me, there is a state of paralysis that takes over when you haven't done the work to prep and prime yourself for these quote unquote new timelines, for this quote unquote new version of self. And I think that because we're standing on the bridge right now and we see the old world behind us and the new world ahead of us type of thing, we're kind of in this midway point this week where we're really questioning, have we done enough work? Have we done enough healing? Do I truly feel worthy and deserving of the life in which I'm praying for, the life in which I'm dreaming of? And let me just say this, you better get your shit together and you better get yourself together quick, because the program that is currently being downloaded, again, when you're downloading a new operating system, you have the choice at that particular point whether you're going to delete the old operating system fully and all the applications that only function with that operating system. All of that's going to go with it. And we have some very important healing work to do, being real and raw and vulnerable with ourselves here this week. We're in this Leo energy because Venus in the heart and soul of the zodiac is bringing in our most authentic soul space online. We want happiness. We want joy. We want to enjoy our lives. We actually want safety, security, stability. We want, supportive and encouraging friends and partners. We want all of these things. But do you actually feel deserving enough to receive them? And that is going to be one of the major, let's call it existential dread points that many of us will kind of be working through here this week. And when you're in that state of mind and state of being, it has a whole system of repercussions on your physical body that are going to highlight aches and pains or highlight irritation or highlight certain, physical symptoms that, again, you have to map back to the energy center, and you have to map those energy centers back to the rulership of the emotion and the mentality that that energy center is based out of. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, again, be a prime opportunity for you to jump to my website, order yourself a copy of my book or download it so that you have it immediately, so that you understand how this is all connected. You understand how to map these ascension symptoms back to the original root cause, which is always an emotion trapped in the cellular form. So guys, we're in for a very interesting ride. We're on this roller coaster moving through eclipse season. I would really welcome you to learn how to throw your hands up in the air, wave them around like you just don't care, give a scream, a shout in order to get that energy out of your body and learn to enjoy the ride. You're not alone. You're not going through this like a solo quest, a solo adventure. It may feel like that at times, but you're definitely not. This is a point in time where the collective needs to go through this roller coaster ride together, where we have to understand that, yes, we have an individualized path that is unfolding along with the greater, grander plan that is unfolding for all of us, and that we have to just lean in to the discomfort, lean into the uncertainty, lean into being okay with not being okay and not knowing. And again, scream, shout, wave your hands around like you just don't care, and learn to enjoy the ride. It is better to roll than to be dragged. Thank you for tuning in. I send you so much love, and we'll talk to you soon.